finally, it is the final comparison question, essay question on the approaches. So Mrs. H, Psychology, and Paper 2, Approaches, specifically the comparison question. So this time we're looking at this question: discuss the social learning theory approach to psychology. Refer to at least one other approach in your answer. Let's say it's a 12 or 16 mark essay. So it is an SLT essay. Start with the AO1s. Okay, so you're going to talk through, we learn through experience, but by observing role models and imitating them. We can learn indirectly, vicariously, and we've got the mediating factors that come between the stimulus and response. So my guys would already know this. You would talk about your examples of mediating factors, a little bit more detail on these. So you're outlining these for your AO1s. Then your AO3s are for analysing, evaluating, but specifically comparing with at least one other approach. Okay, so we could use other evaluative points that I've got here on the screen, but we're going to go through now the key comparisons with each other approach. Okay, so let's start with cognitive versus SLT. Okay, so it's a good one to choose. Cognitive, very similar. We've got our key assumptions, our key areas of discussion and comparison here. You don't need all of them, but pick ones that make sense to you and try to get down as many as you can. And obviously, this is a recap, a really quick recap. So pause the screen, have a look at these, make sure that you can develop each of these points in comparison. We go on, we've got psychoanalytic versus social learning theory. And again, pause the screen, add in a few notes. Just make sure you could develop some of these points if you were asked specifically to compare these two. Going on, behaviourist versus SLT is always a good one to choose because again, SLT is really a bridge between behaviourist and cognitive. So it's a nice little comparison to do. Check that you can make comparisons with most of these different aspects there. Pause the screen, have a look at it, see what you can do. Going on, humanism versus SLT. So probably not such an obvious one to do, but again, there's some good key areas that we could discuss. So just check that out with humanists, make comparisons, pause the screen, see what you can do. And then finally the biological, which is a nice comparison. So maybe behaviourist and biological and cognitive are probably the most obvious ones to have a look at. Here we've got our key areas. Biological, what you would say for those key areas versus SLT. So just going back to our question, original question here. Okay, so discuss social learning. Just make sure you treat it as a social learning essay, but when it says refer to at least one other approach, that's where you're going to bring in these comparisons. All right, as I've shown you with the key points there, make sure you can develop those. Remember, this is a recap. It's a really quick recap. So have a look at the other videos I've made on the specific approaches if you need more depth on understanding them first. But this is just a quick revision and how we would make those comparisons. Okay, so hopefully Eve, that has helped you, and thank you for keeping reinforcing me.